Hey, hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today, we're listening to The Pickaxe Killer, Carla Faye Tucker.
And today we're talking about Pickaxe Killer, Carla Faye Tucker. We're also joined by a special guest, J.C. Mosier. You and I have known each other a very long time. J.C. is a retired Houston homicide detective, and he's now a sergeant with the Precinct 1 Constable's Office. And this case was pretty gruesome. This was 1983.
I saw them pictures. I tell you, it seemed like it could have been done there.
It was really unbelievable. It was I'd never seen anything that terrible, and I worked at homicide division about 7 8 years and saw a lot of evil things being done, but never anything quite like this.
So you've got Carla Faye Tucker, and I guess what you call her boyfriend, Danny Garrett, at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, goes over
they
to
were going together.
Jeffrey Dean's apartment. To what? Why?
They were mad at him for something he had done, and it was either something he had said about them or something that he had done to them. And when, as Carla told me, she got so messed up on drugs that night, she just said, "I'm going to go over there and kick his ass." When they got in, they did not realize that there was also a young lady who he had brought home that night to his apartment.
That's Deborah Thornton?
Yes, Deborah Thornton.
Was both of them people asleep when y'all went in there? Mm-hmm. Did you wake them up? Or did you just wake up? Dad woke up. The girl started waking up. I told her to stick her head under the cover. And she did.
Of course, they rousted them out of bed, and of course, the girl's screaming, pleading for her life, and both of them are. Carla just went crazy. I mean, she just went crazy.
When you went over there, and killed them people, did you go there to do that? Dad went over there. Dad didn't know what he was going to do. But did you have that? You probably shot him. There to do it.
Saw this pickaxe that he used in his business. He was a
cable installer.
He dug phone lines and things, something like that. But he had this big pickaxe laying right there by his bed.
It was a free thing, man. Did y'all take that axe over? It was already there. Sitting right beside it.
In the archives, where all the trial exhibits are, what we're calling the evidence room, the pickaxe is still there. I picked it up. That thing is not a light tool. Carla Faye couldn't have weighed more than $1.20.
She didn't, but I'm going to tell you something. The first thing I heard about Carla from her sister was, "JC, do not try to fight with her. She can kick any guy's ass," and has done it.
Wow. Yeah, because when you pick that thing up, that thing is heavy.
Yeah.
And then when you look, that both Jeffrey and Deborah were hit multiple times with that pickaxe.
Oh,
I can't even imagine the rage.
She ran out of gas finally. She couldn't go any further. Or she would have kept going, but she just finally ran out of gas.
When you talk about evil things that you've seen, I looked at the pictures and the actual CSU video is still there. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The amount, I mean, that's pure rage.
Yeah, that's how actually crazy Carla had become.
Was it the drugs?
Drugs mostly, yeah. She was big into drugs.
No, I seen in the picture that tape on it. I didn't know if they'd stick the tape or not. They won't stick the red gloves on. No, it's all done. I just tell you the truth. I wish you never would have.
Before, though, you said this wasn't your case. You weren't assigned to it, but you wound up getting knee deep into the case. How did that happen?
One of the guys working the case came over and said, "Hey, we talked to a friend of yours today." I mean, I know what case they're working, so I'm thinking, what? I said, "Wait, who are you talking about?" Danny Garrett. He said he was a friend of yours. I said, "Yeah, Danny Garrett. Hell, he's my bartender. He's a real good friend of mine. Yeah, a real good guy." I said, what are y'all talking to him for? Well, he may have some information about the case, and he's got a brother that's also was hanging around Carla a lot, this and that. And I knew his brother. I knew his brother Doug. Doug was an ex-motorcycle bandito biker, and I knew him for a while before through Danny's wife, who was the girl that grew up in my neighborhood with me. And he called me and he said, "Yeah, JC, they came over and woke us up after they had done all this stuff."
This is the brother.
Mm-hmm. Brother.
Wait. So
Doug.
So the brother said Carla and Danny came over afterwards,
right afterwards, had all the stolen stuff, that they stole some of the parts and things that were there, and told them what happened.
Unless somebody freaks out. They told me that, they told me in these words, y'all are targets. They told us that.
How did you get a brother to wear a wire on his brother?
Now, I asked that very question. Are you sure you want to do this to Danny? He said, JC, they will come kill us now. And I have to.
Look at the Henning thing that already had somebody arrested.
There's one part in there, though, that, I mean, to this day makes me squirm. She said that she basically achieved an orgasm every time she swung the pickaxe and landed it.
She told me that.
Do you believe that?
She told me that. I asked her that same question.
Maybe we told me never struck with that, did you? Did you? No, you didn't hate her. Let's just took her out quick and easy.
Well, I told her I didn't believe it.
And she's still stuck with that.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say you're sorry, Carl. I'd hate for you not to be sorry. Okay, I'll fuck.
So they went in, sat in there for an hour and a half, what I don't know. And we were listening on the outside in a big hidden van, and we're listening to everything that was said.
I love you too, Dave. I love the both of you.
I told him, I said, I'm arresting him. Y'all know the rest of it.
Why?
Because I wanted to.
Did he say anything to you when you put the cuffs on?
He sure did. He said, JC, I cannot, as good of friends as we've been, I cannot believe you could think I'm capable of doing something like that. And I said, well, I guess we'll see what happens.
To me, it's like the work of the devil. It's just like the work of the devil. I don't believe I would have ever done anything like that. If the devil didn't hate.
But when you see those pictures and when you see those bodies, that is unbelievable.
Now, they were both convicted. They were both sentenced to die. But Danny died in jail, right?
They were saying liver failure or something.
One of the things that was still in the exhibit archive were their letters to each other, Carla and Danny's letters to each other.
To my darling wife, Carla, may you have a good Valentine's Day. My only wish is that we could be together now and always. I truly believe we will be with each other in the same home again one day, whenever it may be. Please be strong and don't let them give you the death sentence.
It seems like these were two individuals who were completely divorced from reality.
And they were just going with us. There was nothing in this case that wasn't bizarre. You could stack up the report, which is about that high, and on every page you're going to go, something weird's here. You know what I mean? It's the most bizarre thing I've ever been around in my life.
Carla Faye Tucker says religion has prepared her to meet her fate.
No matter what I'm going through right now, I know that the Lord is with me and I'm in His presence.
So she's on death row now, and it's coming up on the execution. Again, only the second woman ever executed in the state of Texas. Last one was during the Civil War.
Yeah.
I knew that I needed to ask for forgiveness. I don't know how I knew that. I just knew that I had to cry out to God, let Him know that what I'd done was horrible and that I needed forgiveness.
I invite them to look at the crime scene photos. Let's see how cute they think those are. Because the same person who looks out from that television set with those eyes at them is the same person who looks straight at my wife and threw a pickaxe into her body.
It's hard to explain how you feel when you know you're sending somebody to death. And I think I had about 14 in my career. No other women though. She would send me a card from time to time, and I would send back a response from time to time. And
What would she send you? I mean, what was she writing to you?
it would be like Christmas, and it'd be some time of the year that was an event or something. Happy Easter, Carla knitted me a beautiful sweater on death row. Even the label, she had her own labels, made with tender, loving care by Carla Faye Tucker. If I'd never worn it, I wouldn't dare wear it. I'd just put it away.
In 1983, Tucker says her heart was changed. That's when she says she accepted Christ.
I don't care how bad it is what you've done. God will meet you right where you're at.
And I tell you, I think that her transition to the love of God was real. Most people tell me, JC, you're an idiot. That's just a show up there, and I just think I think back to her start in life, how terrible it was, all the terrible things that happened to those two girls, Carla and Carrie. They just almost never had a chance. I mean, they never had a chance like you and I did. They were turned into prostitutes at a young age and were actually working right out of their home. Her mother was a prostitute in her younger days. I do feel sorry for her, not for her crime. I feel sorry for her for what happened to her from the time she was 11 or 12 years old. After that, it was all bad. I think she finally, in her mind, thought, now I have something that I never had back then, God.
How did you feel after she was executed?
Terrible. She wanted me to come, and I said no. But if people ask me, I'll tell them, yeah, it's not something I'm proud of. I was proud of every case I worked, if it was successful. But I don't look at this one with any pride. There's no happiness in this case anywhere.
Well, as hard as it was, I'm glad you came, and I really appreciate it. It's always good seeing you, and I always appreciate your time. So thank you for coming in and doing this.
You bet.
All right. That's it for this episode of The Evidence Room. You can catch us every Wednesday, streaming exclusively on KPRC2 Plus at 6:30. Back next Wednesday, another episode.
You're watching KPRC2 Plus. The Evidence Room is coming up next.
Her son remained calm as the judge read the sentence, death by execution.
Josue Flores was murdered last Tuesday on his way home from school.
Officers tell us Trujillo stabbed her boyfriend with stiletto-heeled shoes.
Police say the suspect may be
in or near the Acres Hills area.
Defense attorneys have argued that Gates was legally insane and grossly psychotic when she drowned her children. One by one, they described the deaths of the alleged other 8 victims of the convicted rail car killer.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of The Evidence Room. Today we're talking about Anthony Allen Shore, Houston's so-called Tourniquet Killer. And I have a very special guest with us today, Barbara Magana Robertson. Barbara and I go way back. Barbara was an assignments manager for KPRC for many years, and you have a rather macabre connection to this serial killer. Tell us, how long did you work for KPRC when you got this phone call?
I was only 23, but I was already on the assignment desk. I was at KPRC from the time 1990 to 2010 or 9, something like that. So I was here quite a long time. I had a lot of KPRC family members. I was at work one day. It was a summer day in Houston, and right around noon, I was my job is to log the newscast to see what other newscasts, what the stories are, and the phone rang. And that's how it all started.
That was the tip number, right?
It was the tip line. That's exactly what it was called. It lasted 37 minutes.
So I used to remember the box that when it happened on this college campus when I was in a previous church. Right. I don't remember what I said. Basically, but I talked to, it wasn't Crime Stoppers. Crime Stoppers was even kind of down. I said it was tips. There, 222 tips, please give us a line. So, whatever it is you call it with tips. And I changed my voice, and I remember telling them where to find her. I remember telling them her name was Ruby. I remember telling them her birthday. Do you remember where you was talking to male or female? You call? Honest to God, I don't recall. I want to say female, but I don't recall.
He called me and he said, I have a tip for you. And I said, okay, well, what's your tip? There's a serial killer on the loose. And I'll be honest with you, at that first, initial moment, I was just kind of listening to him half-heartedly because I'm trying to do my job.
Yeah, people all the time call us with, I've got the secret to the universe in my back pocket.
Absolutely. Elvis is at, the local restaurant. I mean, I've had it all. Yeah. And so when, I go, okay, so there's a serial killer. Is that what you're telling me? He says, yes. And I'm going to tell you where you can find a body.
Dana Sanchez. Right. I only got that name from the newspaper. She told me her name was Ruby.
I said, okay, well, tell me about it. And he said, it's near Ritchie Road. And in my mind, Ritchie Road was in Pasadena. And he was not referring to that Ritchie Road. He was referring to Ritchie Road on the north side off of I-45.
This was like an area that was so were the streets were cut or something? Yeah, they looked like they were putting in a new subdivision or something. But they wouldn't even have the streets. Okay.
He was telling me how it was placed.
I couldn't tell you for sure. I'd say probably 100 feet, maybe.
What really got my attention was halfway through the phone call, he was giving me clues. He was giving me that were unbeknownst to me at the time. He gave me a birth date. He gave me the name of a nickname. He gave me an identification of a piece of jewelry. When I went to reach for my key map, things completely changed because he said, don't reach for your key map. I knew right then and there he was watching me.
I can't imagine the feeling that washed over you at that moment.
That changed the entire course of the conversation because what he had just kind of relayed to me in facts, I am now completely tuned in and listening. This is the real deal. The guy's looking at me.
Did you ask him? Where are you? Did you ask him?
No, because I was too busy hiding behind a pole. It was a pillar that was on the assignments desk, and I rolled my chair around that. So in my mind, anything for him not to be able to see me.
Okay.
Because I didn't want him to know that he freaked me out.
And at that time, I had a better recollection of approximately where it was.
He now knows that I'm, just really taking great notes, and I'm I'm getting all the information. I go back over a couple of the facts. I want to know how does he know this, And so I'm starting to just let him talk, and he tells me exactly how the body is in position. And it was strange because he told me that she was going to be found with her legs a certain way. She's going to be looking up to the sky. He gave me so many details that in my mind, I knew I was talking to the person that either saw the body or committed the murder. I said, I'm speaking to the killer. I said, you are the killer. And he had his aha moment. You could tell by the way he was breathing on the phone. And when he knew then that he had me. He knew I believed him. That I believed him. Whatever he spoke was the truth. And I couldn't really know if he was still watching me, but I'm sure that my voice and the way I was looking, he understood that he delivered his message, and I understood it loud and clear.
And there was a part of me that just wanted to be caught and stop.
He wanted me to pay attention so that I would send detectives to her and send a TV crew, and he can get his moment. And I think that was his gift.
I didn't set out to kill her. That was not my intent. But it got out of hand.
So in this call, do you immediately call police or do you go to the news director? I mean, what did you do?
There was a producer right in front of me and that I had worked with for years. And I said, that was the strangest call I've ever taken on Miss Simon's desk. And she says, that's saying something.
That turned out to be the understatement of the year, I think.
Yeah. So I called Harris County and I said, I have something for you. It's a strange one. But they never doubted me because I had such a good relationship.
Yeah,
I knew all of them. And I said, look, and then my journalism kicked in because I said, I'm not going to give this to anybody else. You cannot, put this on the scanner.
That time I had really long hair. I thought I was bleeding on I just looked like a freak out.
When I hung up the phone with him, it was just a matter of minutes. The journalism kicked in. I put my chopper up. We sent a crew on the ground, and the detectives were already en route. And then I get the phone call within 20 minutes. I get the phone call, Barbara, we found a body, exactly like you described it.
So it was to a T.
Beyond a T, because I was able to give him directions the way Anthony Allen Shore gave me directions. And they found it, and within minutes.
Who was the body?
Dana Sanchez.
And that was in 1995.
That's summer of 1995.
Okay.
And she was found in a way that no family member should be described how that loved one was found. But he was in such detail, Robert. It's exactly how he described how she was found.
At this point, I was almost in like a state of shock, a dream state. I wanted to stop. I didn't want to keep doing what was going on. I couldn't. I just knew that I couldn't get caught. I wanted to stop.
I can't imagine going home that night. You felt good.
It was a long day, and news days are typically long, but they had to send someone to our studio to take my statement. It was strange because they sent the upper staff, like the lieutenant, and they sent them here to take my statement. And they were asking me if I was okay, and it still hadn't sunk in that sense. And then until that night when they said we're gonna go home with you, we're gonna help you get to your apartment.
That's when it sunk in?
It kind of sunk in, but I'm still thinking they're just being nice to me because it was a strange day. It was not a typical work day for Barbara. And I was friends with most of the detectives. So they knew prior to me knowing the danger.
He wasn't caught until 2003. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's a long 8 years of this guy being out there. I can't imagine that a day went by during those 8 years that for at least 30 seconds of every day, you didn't think about that.
As it went on, the FBI had to get involved, and Channel 2 was great. They changed my schedule a little bit so that to keep me kind of safe in a way. And the most drastic change is that personally, if I was like in a restaurant and you're waiting for a table and you would hear voices, other people's conversations, and you can be completely talking, you and I can be completely talking. But if I heard a voice, I would completely stop in my track and look over to hear that one voice just to make sure that I can outrule it or I can say that's him. And
so if you heard anything that was similar, it would stop you.
It would stop me dead in my tracks, whatever I was doing, and that was for years.
Well, yeah. I mean, did he ever contact you again after that day?
We don't think so, but he knew that I was working. At that time, I didn't work weekends, but somehow or another, he knew I was working on a Saturday morning.
I had crazy thoughts. I mean, I don't know if you call them demons. People talk about voices in your head. I like other voices, almost like my own voice, like it's a demon. I see some girl walking and I invite it. And I have fantasy trips.
Short was nicknamed the Tourniquet Killer because he used homemade tourniquets to strangle his victims. His spree ran from 1986 to 1995. And this guy gets caught. Who did you get the call? Because I know I was working Channel 2 at that same time as well. So we both were in the newsroom. Who called you? And finally, like, hey, do you remember 8 years ago that person who called you and led you to a body? He's in handcuffs.
Correct. I got a call, and it was from a dear friend that is a retired detective now. And he got the phone call first, and he said they just arrested Anthony Allen Shore. And his words to me completely kind of just it stays with me to this day because it was a very good friend. And he said, "You tell Bill that he can rest now, and you can rest." And I said, "Thank you." And that was all. That was all the conversation was. Like for me to take that phone call.
Did you feel better?
No.
I think it was a shock to much of the Houston region that this guy was a bona fide serial killer. Because, like I said, no one really knew that there was a serial killer out there. And then when this guy gets caught, suddenly he starts confessing, not just to Dana Sanchez's murder in 1995, which turned out to be the last. It turns out he's killed, 3 young girls, 1 woman, sexually assaulted and nearly killed another teenager, and then molested his own 2 daughters. And he starts confessing to all of this.
First was Lori Ann Tremblay, Dana Sanchez. The young Revelar case, Revelar, however you say it. Revelar. She told me her name was Carmen. Talk about another case that y'all don't know about.
Let's go back to the original phone call that I took. Mm-hmm. If you remember, I'm thinking that he's telling me details of one body that's going to be found. But unbeknownst to me at that time, he's giving me all these clues because he wants to be known as a serial killer. And you have to remember when he first started that conversation, he said, I'm going to tell you where a body's at. There's a serial killer on the loose. He gave me that fact, and I gave it to the detectives. But unbeknownst to me, those facts were huge details in murder cases that were unsolved. And you have to remember, he murdered in different jurisdictions. So he knew that if I told Harris County, maybe Harris County would pick up on those. If I told Houston, maybe Houston would pick up on those. But, they had to talk to each other. And that's when the task force was eventually started.
It's interesting because they didn't catch him because they eventually figured out who he was. It was because of his DNA that was taken when he molested his own 2 daughters. And that DNA finally came back as a match to one of the victims.
And I don't remember the exact quote, but when he was arrested, when the detectives went up to him, he was not surprised. And I believe the quote was, "What took you guys so long?"
I just wanted this whole thing to end. That's why I'm talking to you now. It's over. I want to make sure that nothing else happens again.
It was interesting, though, when I was listening to the confessions, he seemed to fight himself at one point because there was one teenage girl in here, and this to this day gives me nightmares, thinking that he was a young schoolgirl that he just wanted.
So I broke into the house. The door was unlocked, and I waited for her to get there. She got there. She came in, and I wanted to prove to myself that I didn't have to take a life.
And he let her go, but then he was kind of proud of himself that I didn't kill her. Well, there, look, see? combat the evil. It's like, what kind of thinking is that?
He had a very sadistic mind where he tried to, please himself by saying, "You're really a good person," but yet he was doing all these, horrible acts. And in talking with him in those 37 minutes, I could tell you that man was evil. I know he has 4 on his record, but he's bound to have done more because I think he had an appetite for it. And the way he talked to me that day, it was part of his get. It was part of the game. It was part of his personality to keep at it.
Okay, so when did he become the Tourniquet Killer? Because when you look, when you're in the county archives and you go into the boxes of the trial exhibits, I mean, you can still see the tourniquets that he had fashioned there. So when did that all come out and he become known as the Tourniquet Killer?
I believe when the task force was created and they started looking at the evidence and how he progressed from using bamboo or a toothbrush to turn the tourniquet.
Pencil or a paintbrush or something you use. Piece of wood, some kind of piece of wood. You use as a, I don't know, what's the word? Tourniquet maybe? Or yeah.
At Dana Sanchez's trial, which I got to testify at, Kelly Stiegler, former DA here, she talked about how the neck, the tourniquet, kept on making it small, that it was not even bigger than a fist, the neck portion.
Oh, so you tightened the tourniquet so much that it shrunk her neck.
Exactly. And this is
I didn't know that.
This is the same guy who did these other murders. And I can remember working the Diana case, the 9-year-old, as on the assignment desk. And at that time, it was kind of like, who would do this to a 9-year-old girl?
That was a crazy, that's specific. I don't understand exactly. Too young, not developed. That was an opportunity.
I remember going in, and I was so grateful for the friendships that I had with all the detectives because I saw them come in one by one when I was testifying, and they came in as a show of support. And I was very thankful. And Kelly Stiegler and I are still friends to this day because the prosecutor at the time, we're still friends. And this is a strange thing, but this is how weird Anthony Allen Shore was. At the defense table, it's his lawyer. And then it's an empty chair, and then it's Anthony Allen Shore.
So his own attorney didn't want to sit next to him.
His own attorney put a chair between him and Anthony Allen Shore because he was just that weird of a man. He perfected his way of murdering these women because of the fact that he could not, on that using the nylon, it got, in his words, I believe he described it as it just wasn't working. And so he used something that, because I believe he also had cut himself on that first one.
I just kept saying, man, this gotta stop. I'm a sick puppy.
The murder, he did not like how long it took. And so he had in a really sick way, he had to perfect his ways to be able to complete these murders that he was known for.
So, oh my God. Okay. So, the thing that always kind of amazes me about guys like this. So he's out there from 1986 to 1995. He murders 3 young girls, 1 young woman, nearly murders another one after torturing and raping her. But yet he's living his life. He had been married a couple of times. He was in a rock band. I mean, there was video of him in a band. And they even put like a cassette together. There was like a list of songs and everything. And I mean, it's like, how do people live these dual lives?
He's sadistic. He's not you and I. We can't even think about that kind of evil. But you have to also remember that, I'm a strong personality. I have great confidence. I come from a great support system, loving husband, great family. And I hate to admit, but he was in my mind often in those years because
he had 8 years of a guy calling you and not knowing who that person was, but knowing he was a murderer.
So many details about me, and so it was unsettling.
I think at one point you had told me the only time you could ever sleep was you had to go to your parents' ranch.
I was just down the road from them, and
shock with this guy. He also had massive porn addiction. Like they found all these pornographic deals. They pulled his, search history on his browser, and it was just he had this.
He wanted to see a picture of me before I testified so that he can control himself in the courtroom.
He said that?
Not to me.
Well, no.
Yes.
One of the detectives told you that.
Yeah. And I haven't talked about that. Well, my husband knew.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't know that. Jesus. So after you testified, and I mean, it wasn't you confessed everything, so it wasn't a guilt or innocence deal.
Correct.
After you testified, did you feel better?
Oh, absolutely. I felt better, but I was not done until January when he was executed.
Anthony Allen Shore's voice quivered a bit as he apologized to the families of his victims. He then wished a friend happy birthday and told the warden he was ready to go. Shore was pronounced dead 13 minutes after the lethal injection was started. You tell me if this jives with the picture you have in your mind of this man. These were his very last words on earth. I would like to take a moment to say I'm sorry. No amount of words can ever undo what I've done. To the family of my victims, I wish I could undo the past. It is what it is. God bless all of you. I will die with a clear conscience. That part got me. I made my peace. There is no others. I would like to wish a happy birthday to Barbara Carroll. Today is her birthday. It's very jumbled. I would like to especially thank those that have helped me. You know who you are. God bless everybody. Until we meet again, I'm ready, Warden.
It is what it is the one thing that I always have kind of thought about, who gives this man the right to say that, number one. And, we have a good God. We have a great God. And I'm not God. So whatever he thinks is up to him. But he did a lot of evil. He did a lot of evil. And if you go back to the very last word, and he says, "Oh, I'm feeling that now." That's when the execution is going on.
I remember.
Do you remember that?
Ooh wee.
Ooh wee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It really does burn. Yeah.
And at my mind, that quote came to mind after I knew he was executed because it's kind of like, I wonder what Dana said. I wonder, how she pleaded for her life. I wonder what Diana said. Did she plead for her life?
Today is about Dana, Diana, Maria, and Lori.
Holding up pictures of the three girls and one woman Shore raped, tortured, and killed, along with an obscure picture of a fifth victim who managed to survive, Andy Kahn said today was not about their killer, but about their families finding peace.
It has taken over 20 years for the victims' families to finally reach some pinnacle of justice.
Now, you had said that you thought there were more out there. And I know this is weird, but his final statement, he said there were no more. That was it. That he had confessed to everything. Those were his last words before his execution.
The appetite of how he went after his victims, and the way that he was at the trial, even going all the way back to that phone call. I can't imagine that he was satisfied with just 4 as his victims, and I don't know. I'm not a detective, but I've always thought that he had more out there because there's too long of time between the 4, and what did he do for 8 years?
A couple of the crime scene videos are still here at the county archives.
Yes.
Those were god awful. And those were truly god awful.
I was able to see some of the evidence, and being described in that conversation about the tourniquet style and how her body was going to be found. Those are details that are going to always be with me. But when you actually go and see some of the evidence that they had against Anthony Allen Shore, it kind of, puts everything. It's not a puzzle that I want to do, but it puts all the pieces together. And Anthony Allen Shore was a monster.
Barb, you and I have known each other for more than 2 decades, and you know I love you. So thank you for being here, even though it's not a great subject to do it. But thank you for doing this with us.
I want to thank you and KPRC. When the phone call came in, KPRC kind of protected me. I was the young 23-year-old, so I do appreciate that. And I do want to thank you, Robert, because through the years, not everybody remembers Anthony Allen Shore, but I do. I did every day, for quite some time. And I could always call you, and you would always give me the straight up answer or what you knew at the time. You never held back. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyway, and again, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. That's going to be it for episode 4 of the Evidence Room. We stream exclusively